The headlines are buzzing. Ottawa is under pressure. Every major news outlet is asking the same question. Will the government stick to its guns, or is a dramatic policy reversal on the horizon? Is Canada about to reverse its 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles? The move, once hailed as a bold stand, is now under intense scrutiny. This policy, meant to protect Canadian jobs, has triggered a trade war and economic pain. Factories are slowing down, and workers are feeling the pinch. Now, the government is considering a dramatic U-turn. Behind closed doors, officials are weighing the costs and benefits of sticking with the tariff. Why? Because the fallout is hitting home. Families are struggling to make ends meet, and small businesses are closing their doors. The tariff was supposed to give Canadian automakers a fighting chance, but the gamble backfired, leaving showrooms empty and assembly lines quiet. Farmers can't sell their crops. International buyers are turning away, and silos are filling up with unsold grain. Consumers can't afford new cars, prices have soared and choices have shrunk, leaving many Canadians frustrated and stuck with aging vehicles. The pain is real, and the pressure is mounting from every corner of the country. Urban and rural communities alike are feeling the strain. What once looked like a bold move now seems like a costly mistake. Editorials and experts are calling for a rethink. Closed-door meetings, leaks, and anxious phone calls suggest a major shift is coming. The mood in Ottawa is tense and uncertain. This isn't just about cars, it's about our economy, our future, and our place in the world. The ripple effects could touch every Canadian. The government's decision will define our relationship with China and shape our economy for years. International partners are watching closely. The stakes are high and the story is changing fast. Every hour brings new developments and speculation. So, what's really happening behind the scenes? Who's pushing for change and who's resisting? Is this a sign of weakness or a smart correction? Some say it's time to adapt, others warn of losing credibility. The government isn't talking openly, but the signs are clear. Silence speaks volumes as speculation grows. The consequences of the tariff are rippling through every sector. From farms to factories to retail, no one is untouched. The pressure is building from all sides. Farmers, consumers, and industry. The calls for action are getting louder. What started as a show of strength is now a political crisis. The government's credibility is on the line. The government faces a choice: double down or change course. The decision will echo for years to come. The decision will impact your wallet, your job, and your community. Every Canadian has a stake in what happens next. This is a turning point for Canada. The path we choose now will define our nation's direction. The next move will shape our future. The choices made in Ottawa will be felt for generations. Are we ready for what comes next? Canadians everywhere are watching and waiting for answers. Let's get to the facts. It's time to separate rumor from reality and understand what's truly at stake. The story behind the headlines is more complicated than it seems. There's more to this crisis than meets the eye. The government's next step will have ripple effects for years. Let's dive in and uncover what's really at play. Let's rewind to the early months of 2024, a year that would soon become infamous in Canadian trade history. The Canadian government made a bold move by announcing a 100% tariff on all Chinese electric vehicles, a decision that would ripple across the nation. The primary goal was clear: protect Canada's struggling auto sector from a flood of cheap, high-tech Chinese EVs that threaten to dominate the market. The logic seems straightforward: make Chinese cars prohibitively expensive, and Canadians would naturally turn to domestic options. But China, not one to back down, hit back, and they hit back hard. Beijing retaliated swiftly with massive tariffs on Canadian agricultural exports. Canola, soybeans, and pork were all targeted. Suddenly, Canadian farmers found themselves cut off from one of their biggest and most lucrative markets. The trade war escalated at a rapid pace, spreading far beyond the confines of the auto industry and affecting various sectors. The government hoped for negotiations with China, but instead, the conflict only deepened, with no resolution in sight. What began as a strategic plan to save auto jobs quickly spiraled into a full-blown crisis for farmers across the nation. The tariff, initially intended as a protective shield, transformed into a weapon that turned against us, causing widespread damage. Canadian canola and pork piled up unsold, prices crashed dramatically, and farmers faced the grim reality of financial ruin. The economic pain spread to consumers too, as they faced rising prices and dwindling options at the checkout. The cost of electric vehicles soared, making them unaffordable for many, and affordable options vanished from the market. The government's bold move inadvertently triggered a full-blown economic battle. with consequences that were felt nationwide. Everyday Canadians found themselves caught in the crossfire, their lives disrupted by the ongoing trade conflict. The initial problem of EV competition had morphed into a much bigger, more complicated fight that no one had anticipated. The message from China was clear and unyielding: hurt us, and we'll hurt you back with equal force. The government's gamble on protectionism had unintended consequences, leading to a situation spiraling out of control. The trade war was on, and the stakes were rising with each passing day, affecting international relations and economies. The fallout was immediate and widespread, impacting industries, families, and the nation's economic stability. The government's plan backfired spectacularly, and the pressure on officials mounted as protests erupted. The story was no longer just about cars, it was about the broader implications for Canadian jobs and livelihoods. It was about the future of Canadian jobs, farms, and families, and the legacy we would leave for the next generation. The fire of conflict was spreading fast, threatening to consume everything in its path, and Ottawa, the heart of the nation, was feeling the heat more than ever before as the crisis deepened. The trade war hit the prairies hard, sending shockwaves through the heart of Canada's breadbasket. For farmers in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba, China isn't just another customer, it's a crucial market that buys a huge share of their crops. When China imposed counter-tariffs, that market disappeared almost overnight, leaving farmers with nowhere to send their harvest. Imagine working all year, harvesting a crop worth millions, only to find your biggest buyer suddenly gone, and your hard work at risk of going to waste. Canola and soybeans piled up in storage, prices crashed, and contracts that once guaranteed income were canceled without warning. Farmers like David, who had just invested in new equipment and technology to boost yields, suddenly faced financial disaster and mounting debt. The tariff on Chinese cars, meant to help auto workers in Ontario, threatened to bankrupt farm families thousands of miles away. Pork producers were hit too. China turned to other countries for meat, leaving Canadian farmers with surplus livestock and plummeting prices. Aid packages from Ottawa weren't enough to cover the losses. Farmers wanted real solutions and open markets, not just handouts. Frustration grew in rural communities. Farmers felt abandoned, collateral damage in a political fight they never chose to join. They lobbied Ottawa, demanding a solution and a seat at the table where decisions were being made. The government's auto strategy, designed to protect one industry, was sacrificing the livelihoods of another. The pain wasn't just economic, it was personal, affecting families, communities, and generations of tradition. The agricultural community's anger grew louder, echoing across the prairies and into the halls of power. Their voices started to get noticed in Ottawa, as petitions and protests made headlines. The trade war was no longer just about cars or factories, it was about the future of rural Canada. It was about the survival of rural communities, small towns, and family farms. The government faced a growing backlash from the prairies as farmers demanded to be heard. The pressure to change course was building, and Ottawa could no longer look away. Farmers became the face of the unintended consequences, their stories resonating across the nation. Their struggle forced Ottawa to reconsider its strategy and listen to those most affected. The crossfire was real, and the stakes were rising with every passing day. The government could no longer ignore the pain. The crisis demanded action, and the future of rural Canada hung in the balance. While farmers suffered, consumers felt the sting too. Affordable Chinese EVs, once within reach, doubled in price overnight. Middle-class families hoping to go electric were priced out. The tariff wiped out the most budget-friendly options. With less competition, all EV prices stayed high. Government rebates couldn't offset the sticker shock. The dream of owning an electric car faded for many. The transition to EVs became a luxury for the wealthy. Working-class Canadians were left behind. The policy meant to protect industry punished consumers. It slowed the green transition and hurt climate goals. People started asking, who is this policy really helping? The answer wasn't clear. The backlash was swift. Farmers and consumers united in anger, creating a political storm in Ottawa. MPs from rural and urban areas faced mounting pressure. The coalition behind the tariff began to fracture. Public support faded as the real-world pain became clear. Opposition parties seized the moment, attacking the government's policy as a failure. Committees heard stories of financial ruin. The government was accused of being short-sighted. Internal divisions grew, some wanted to hold firm, others demanded change. The political cost was rising. Doing nothing was no longer an option. A change was coming. Enter Carney, the new Minister of Finance. Known for his pragmatic, data-driven approach, Carney pushed for a review of the EV tariff. He saw the damage to agriculture and the drag on climate goals. Carney argued for a smarter, more strategic policy. He looked to global examples like the EU's targeted tariffs. Instead of a blunt 100% tariff, he proposed a nuanced approach. The goal: protect key industries without crippling trade. Carney's influence grew, and his gambit became the government's new direction. The shift marked a move away from aggressive protectionism. The government began exploring a balanced, adaptive strategy. The question: could Carney convince the rest of Ottawa? The stakes were high. The first test of his leadership had arrived. Canada stands at a crossroads. Three options are on the table. First, stay the course. Keep the tariff, protect auto jobs, but accept pain for farmers and consumers. Second, scrap the tariff. End the trade war, help farmers and consumers, but risk the auto industry. Third, find a middle ground. Impose a moderate, targeted tariff, protect some jobs, ease the pain, but risk pleasing no one. Each path has risks and rewards. Staying the course means continued hardship for many. Scrapping the tariff could devastate manufacturing. The middle path is a compromise, but not a perfect solution. The decision will define Canada's economic landscape for years. The Prime Minister and Cabinet face a tough choice. The stakes are enormous. The future of jobs, trade, and climate goals hangs in the balance. The next move will shape Canada's direction. The world is watching. This isn't just a political debate, it's about your life. The price of cars, your job, and your community are all on the line. Lowering or removing the tariff could save you thousands on your next car. It could make going electric possible for your family. But it could also put manufacturing jobs at risk. The decision is a balancing act between regions and industries. It's about job security for your friends and neighbors. It's about meeting Canada's climate goals. Affordable EVs are key. The environment and your children's future are at stake. This is also about Canada's place in the world. Do we stand firm against unfair trade or prioritize open markets? The choice will define our foreign policy and economic future. What kind of country do we want to be? That's the real question. The facts are clear, the stakes are high. Ottawa faces a defining choice. Stick with the tariff and protect one industry, or open the door to competition and risk another. Every option has a price. There's no perfect answer. This is your economy, your future. What would you do if you were Prime Minister? Stay the course, reverse the policy, or find a middle ground? The debate is happening now. The decision is coming soon. Your voice matters. What path should Canada take?